Every year on the same date, hundreds of thousands of people travel to a tomb in northern Israel. What do they know that most of us don't? They are not tourists. They are not curious travelers passing through. They come on foot. They come in buses that have been booked for months. They come from 6 continents. From cities where most people have never even heard of the name. They are whispering, and they come to one mountain, one grave, on one specific day each year. And when they arrive, they weep, they dance. They light fires so massive you can see the glow from miles away. And the strange thing, the thing that no one who has not stood there in the middle of that crowd can fully explain, is the feeling in the air. Something is different on that mountain. Something is open that is not open on any other day of the year. The air carries something. The darkness between the fires carries something. And the people who come, even the ones who came skeptically, even the ones who drove through the night telling themselves it was tradition and nothing more, walk away from that mountain changed in ways they struggle to articulate for months afterward. I want to tell you what that day is. I want to tell you what is really happening there, and why whatever is unlocked at that mountain on that one date each year is available not only to those who travel to Israel, but to anyone, anywhere in the world, who understands what is actually being offered. My name is Rabbi Ezra Morgenstern, and I am 76 years old. I have spent more than 50 years studying the mystical dimensions of the Torah. I have stood at that grave in Meron more times than I can count. I have been there in crowds of tens of thousands, and I have been there at 3 a.m. when the hillside was almost quiet and the fires were burning low, and there was nothing between me and the sky and that stone and whatever moves through that place on that night. And I want to tell you something I rarely say publicly. Of all the sacred days on the Jewish calendar, of all the moments I have studied and observed and wept through and celebrated across 5 decades, there is one day that has shaken me to my core more than any other. There is one day that changed what I believe is possible for a human being. There is one day where I have stood in the middle of a crowd of hundreds of thousands of people and felt, with absolute certainty, that the boundary between this world and something much larger had become genuinely thin. And that day is Lag BaOmer. But before I tell you what that day truly is, before I bring you into the story at the center of it, I want to ask you something. And I want you to hear this question not as a philosophical exercise, but as a mirror being held up to your actual life. Right now, in whatever room you are sitting in whatever circumstances have brought you to this video. Are you living with a locked door somewhere inside you? Have you been praying? Or hoping? Or reaching towards something for months or years, with no sense that anything is actually moving? Do you feel, sometimes, like there is a dimension of existence that other people seem to have access to? Some deeper current of meaning, some sense of being truly known and guided and loved by something larger than yourself. And you are standing just outside that current, close enough to feel the edge of it, but somehow unable to get all the way in. Are you tired of being told that the breakthrough is coming when you cannot feel evidence that it is? Are you still here, still believing, but quietly and privately exhausted by how long the waiting has already been? If that is you, stay with me. Stay for the whole video, because what I am about to share with you is not a myth invented by people who needed something to hold on to. It is not a piece of folklore that comforts without content. It is a historical reality, a spiritual event that happened in the 2nd century of the Common Era on a hillside in the Galilee, and whose effects are still radiating outward right now, today, available to you. Before we go any further, If what I am sharing is beginning to open something in you, I want you to do something simple and powerful. Go into the comments right now and type these 5 words, "Open the door for me." That is your declaration today. That is your signal to heaven that you are not just consuming content. You are here, you are listening, you are asking. And if you have not yet subscribed to this channel, please do that now and turn on the bell. Every week I am here with teachings that cost me decades to gather, and I want you to have them the moment they arrive. Now, let me tell you about the man in the cave. His name was Shimon bar Yochai. He was a 2nd century rabbi who lived in the land of Israel during one of the most brutal periods of Roman occupation. He was a student of the great Rabbi Akiva, and like his teacher, he carried a fire, a spiritual intensity that set him apart from even the most accomplished scholars of his generation. The Talmud records that when the sages gathered to deliberate questions of Jewish law, if Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai offered an opinion, that opinion carried a weight that was qualitatively different from the others. Not just because he was brilliant, though he was, but because something behind his words felt close to the source. It felt like heat coming off something real. But then something happened. The Talmud records it in Tractate Shabbat. 3 sages were sitting together discussing the Roman Empire's achievements. 2 of them found ways to speak with appreciation for what Rome had constructed. Roads that connected cities, markets that moved goods, public infrastructure that served daily life. But Rabbi Shimon was the 3rd voice in that room. And Rabbi Shimon said what the others could not bring themselves to say out loud. He said that everything Rome built, it built for itself, for its own power, for its own glory, not for the people it subjugated, not for truth, not for the divine order. Someone heard that conversation. Word reached the Roman authorities, and immediately a sentence of death was issued against Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. He had no choice. He fled. He took his son, Rabbi Elazar, and they found a cave in a village called Pekiin in the Upper Galilee, and they hid there. Not for a week, not for a month, according to the Talmud. They hid there for 13 years. 13 years. Let that number land for a moment. A father and a son, sealed inside a cave in the hills of northern Israel, cut off from community, from civilization, from the outside world entirely. No visitors, no correspondence, no comers, no ordinary life of any kind. Just 2 people in a cave and the silence that settles when everything external has been removed. And according to the tradition, God caused a carob tree to grow miraculously at the entrance, providing them food, and a spring of fresh water to flow nearby, keeping them alive in this physically impossible situation. Think about what 13 years in a cave actually does to a human being. In the first year, you probably grieve everything you have lost. The relationships, the role, the sense of being part of something. In the 2nd and 3rd year, you adapt because you have no alternative. By the 5th year, you cannot fully remember what ordinary life felt like from the inside. By the 10th year, you have become something that does not have a name in the ordinary vocabulary. Because the ordinary vocabulary was built to describe people who still have the scaffolding of external life in place. And you do not. You have been stripped down to something more fundamental than identity, more essential than role, more real than reputation. And in that radical emptiness, something happens. What happened to Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai in that cave is what the mystical tradition describes as the opening of the sod. The secret, the fourth and innermost layer of the Torah, the level beneath the plain, meaning beneath the allegory, beneath even the deep interpretive structures that trained scholars spend lifetimes exploring. The innermost chamber, the place where creation is not a collection of facts but a living conversation between the infinite and the finite, the place where the Torah stops being a text and becomes a fire. In the cave, that fire entered Rabbi Shimon, or perhaps more accurately, in the cave, Rabbi Shimon became empty enough to stop blocking the fire that had always been there. And he began to receive what would eventually be recorded in the Zohar, the foundational text of Jewish mysticism, whose name in Hebrew means radiance, splendor, light. That changes everything. Because here is what that story is really about. Not one man in one cave in one century. It is about the pattern. It is about what happens when a human being is stripped of every distraction, every comfort, every external support, and in that radical emptiness, finally encounters the deepest reality. Rabbi Shimon did not discover something in the cave and hoard it. He was prepared in the cave so that on one specific day, at the end of his life, he could give it away completely. And that day was Lag BaOmer. The name itself is a number. Lag, in Hebrew, is made of two letters. Lamed, which carries the numerical value of 30, and Gimel, which carries the value of 3. Together 33. BaOmer means of the Omer, which is the sacred counting period that runs between the holiday of Passover and the holiday of Shavuot, the giving of the Torah at Sinai. 49 days, 7 complete weeks, counted each evening by observant Jews since the days of the ancient temple, each day named, each day intentional. And Lag BaOmer falls on the 33rd of those days. During the weeks of the Omer, Jewish tradition observes a period of semi-mourning. The Talmud records that a devastating plague took the lives of vast numbers of students of Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Shimon's own teacher, during this counting period, because the tradition says they did not treat one another with proper respect. The grief of that loss settled over the Omer season like weather. Restrictions on celebration. No weddings. No haircuts. A season of sobriety between two moments of joy. But on the 33rd day, something broke. The mourning lifted. And whether that was the day the plague ceased, or the day Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai departed the world, or both. Lag BaOmer has always been observed as the one day within the semi-mourning of the Omer when joy breaks through the surface, when it is not only permitted but required to celebrate, and the deepest reason for that joy is recorded in the Idra Zuta. The Idra Zuta, the Lesser Assembly, is a section of the Zohar describing the last day of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai's life. It is one of the most extraordinary passages in all of Jewish literature, and I want to describe it to you as carefully as I can. On the day Rabbi Shimon knew he was about to leave this world, he gathered his closest disciples around him. The Zohar records his words, "Now is a time of favor. What could not be revealed until now, I will reveal. The holy things that were sealed, I will unseal." And so he began to teach. And while he was teaching, the Idra Zuta records what was happening around him. All that day, fire surrounded the house. The light was so intense that no one from outside could approach. The disciples inside could barely look in his direction because of the radiance filling the room. Rabbi Abba, the scribe who was writing as Rabbi Shimon spoke, later recorded that at a certain moment he looked up and could not see Rabbi Shimon's face because of the light surrounding him. He stopped writing. He could not continue. And then the light changed. And when Rabbi Abba was finally able to look again, Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai had left this world. He was lying on his right side, and his face was smiling. Pay attention to the next sentence. Because then the Idra Zuta records this, a voice called out from above, saying, "Come and gather for the hillside of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai." Not the mourning. The hillside, the celebration, the joyful gathering. Why? Because Rabbi Shimon had told his students not to grieve his passing. He had gone deep enough into the reality of the soul and its continuation beyond the body, that the moment of his departure held no terror for him. And more than that, he had told them that what he carried was not going to be buried with him. The fire he had spent 13 years receiving and a lifetime transmitting was not ending with the death of his body. It was being released into the world in its fullness. The container was being removed so the light could spread. That is the real secret of Lag BaOmer. This is what hundreds of thousands of people are traveling to a mountain in northern Israel to remember on this specific date every year. This is not a memorial service. This is the annual return of an opening, the yearly anniversary of the moment when the greatest channel of divine light in his generation completed his work and said, "At the edge of his departure, I am done holding this. It is yours. Take it." And the people who come to Meron, who stand on that hillside in the darkness and the firelight, weeping and dancing and staying awake through the night beside bonfires that remind them of something they cannot quite name. They know this, whether they can put it into words or not. Their feet bring them there, because something in the human soul knows when a door is open. You feel the draft. You sense the warmth from somewhere, and you walk toward it. But here is what most people miss. Even people who know this story, even people who make the pilgrimage every year, the door is not at the mountain. The door is not in the geography of the Galilee or the stone of the tomb or the night air on that particular hillside. The door is in you. Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai spent 13 years in a cave, becoming a vessel, not hiding, being hollowed out of everything that was not essential, stripped of every distraction, every comfort, every external validation, until what remained was the pure capacity to receive. And in that emptiness, he received everything. You are watching this right now because somewhere in you there is a cave you have been in without choosing it. A season that feels sealed. A stretch of waiting that has gone on longer than you can explain. A loss that has not finished reshaping you. A prayer that you have been carrying so long the weight of it has become familiar. Like something you hold without noticing. You have been treating that cave like a prison. What if it is a classroom? What if the darkness you are sitting in is not punishment but preparation? What if the stripping away of everything you thought you needed is exactly the process that creates in you the kind of vessel that can hold what is about to be placed in it? Hear this carefully. The Zohar, whose name in Hebrew means radiance and splendor, was not written in a palace. It was not composed in comfort or safety or prosperity. It came from a cave, from hiding, from total darkness, from the complete absence of everything the world calls success. The greatest mystical light in the Jewish tradition was generated in conditions that looked, from the outside, like disaster. That is not an accident. That is the pattern. That is how this has always worked. Think of Joseph, sold into slavery by his own brothers. His gifts mocked and ignored. Imprisoned in Egypt for years before the moment arrived when everything that darkness had formed in him was exactly what the crisis required. Think of Moses, who spent 40 years in the wilderness tending sheep before the burning bush appeared, and he realized his entire preparation had been happening without his knowing it. Think of David hiding in caves from the army of King Saul, writing in that darkness the Psalms that have accompanied millions of people through their own darkest hours. The pattern is not coincidence. It is the grammar of how light enters the world. Are you tired of measuring your spiritual life by signs that have not arrived? Have you been waiting for confirmation that you have not been forgotten? Some visible evidence that the process has been real. Do you feel like everyone else's prayers are landing somewhere and yours are circling without destination? Then hear what the Idra Zuta said to the disciples who sat with Rabbi Shimon that day. Now is the time of favor. What was sealed is being unsealed. You did not arrive at this video by accident. You were directed here. And what is being offered to you right now is access to the exact light that surrounded that house in the Galilee and has been available on this date every year since. The Zohar carries 4 levels of meaning. The tradition calls them Pardes, an acronym that spells the Hebrew word for orchard or paradise. The plain narrative, the allegorical meaning, the deep interpretive level, and at the 4th and innermost level, the sod, the secret, not secret like a restricted password, secret like the interior of a seed before it breaks open into what it was always going to become. The level at which the text opens and you see what it was pointing toward all along. The level where creation is not a catalog of facts but a living transmission of love between the infinite source and everything that has been brought into being. But I want you to understand something deeper about why the Zohar was written in Aramaic and not in Hebrew. The sages teach that Hebrew is the sacred tongue, the language of direct divine address, the language in which the Torah itself was given. Aramaic, by contrast, was the everyday language of the Jewish people in the Talmudic era. It was the language of the marketplace, the courtroom, the household. It was the language that ordinary people spoke when they were not in the synagogue, not in the study house, not in the presence of the sacred. Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai wrote the Zohar in the language of the ordinary world. He took the deepest secrets of the divine, the innermost architecture of creation, the hidden dimensions of the soul and its relationship to the infinite, and he dressed them in the language that everyday people use to discuss bread and commerce and weather. That choice was deliberate. It was a declaration. The deepest truths of the Torah are not reserved for scholars. They are not the property of those who have mastered the sacred tongue. They are for anyone who is willing to receive them. They are for you. In whatever language you speak, in whatever state of preparation you currently have, in whatever cave you currently occupy. That is the revolutionary heart of what Lag BaOmer celebrates. Not just that Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai was a great man, not just that he produced a great text, but that he believed and demonstrated through the entire shape of his life that the light is not exclusive. The fire is not for the few. The door that opened on the day he departed was open for everyone. This is what Rabbi Shimon entered in the cave. And the Zohar is his life's work of trying to pass it through words into the souls of people who needed it. Written in Aramaic, dense and luminous, and sometimes almost impenetrable, it has been lighting fires in human souls for centuries. Great scholars have devoted their entire lives to a single passage. Simple people who could not read a word have reported something holy moving through them simply from holding the book. The Zohar is not primarily a text to be analyzed. It is a transmission of light to be received. And Lag BaOmer is the day that transmission is most open, most available, most close to the surface. And this is why people light fires. Because the Idra Zuta records that on the day Rabbi Shimon died, fire surrounded his house. Because as the procession carried his body toward the place of burial, fire went before them, the bonfires of Lag BaOmer, blazing across Israel and in Jewish communities all over the world, are a reenactment of that fire, not as theater, as actual contact with the event itself, as an annual reaching back through time to touch the moment when the container was removed and the light spread. When you sit beside a bonfire on Lag BaOmer, you are not sitting beside burning wood. You are being reminded of something your soul already knows. That light is the fundamental reality, that the darkness you have been walking through is temporary, that somewhere, in someone, in something, the fire is always burning, and that fire is yours. It is available. It is for you. Now I want to tell you about the bows and the arrows. Because there is another tradition associated with Lag BaOmer, especially for children, that might seem strange at first but carries a message worth hearing. On Lag BaOmer, children play with bows and arrows. In Israel and in many Jewish communities around the world, you see groups of children with little wooden bows, shooting at targets, playing games that involve aim and trajectory and the tension of a bowstring. Why? One tradition connects the bow and arrow to the rainbow. The Torah records that after the flood, in the time of Noah, God placed a rainbow in the sky as a sign of covenant. The Hebrew word for rainbow and for bow is the same keshet, and the tradition records a remarkable teaching about Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. It says that during his lifetime, no rainbow appeared in the sky. The reason given is this: the presence of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai in the world was itself sufficient to fulfill the protective purpose that the rainbow represented. His merit, his connection to the divine, his role as a channel of light in the world, made the rainbow unnecessary. The sign was already walking the earth in human form. After his death, the rainbow returned. And so on Lag BaOmer, children play with the bow as a remembrance of the man whose presence was itself the covenant sign, as a reminder that human beings can become vessels of such extraordinary light that the very structure of the heavenly order is affected by their presence, and as an encouragement, aimed at children, but true for everyone, that you are not just a passive recipient of the world, you are a participant in it. You are meant to aim at something. You are meant to develop your capacity, to stretch the bowstring, to practice the discipline of focus and intention. The bow that points toward a target is not aggression. It is the discipline of becoming someone whose life points at something real. Where are you pointing your life? What are you aiming at? What is the target that, if you hit it, would mean you had done what you were brought into the world to do? These are the questions that Lag BaOmer asks. And they are not casual questions. They are the questions that a man who spent 13 years in a cave, being stripped of everything that was not essential, asks with perfect seriousness. Now let me give you the practice. The Kabbalists mapped the 49 days of the Omer onto 7 qualities of the soul: love, disciplina, harmony, endurance, humility, connection, sovereignty, 7 qualities across 7 weeks, each week exploring one quality through the lens of all 7, and the 33rd day, Lag BaOmer, falls on what is called Had of Had, the quality of humble receptivity at its deepest expression within itself, the position in the spiritual calendar that corresponds to the vessel that is most emptied, most open, most ready to receive without grasping. Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai chose this alignment for his departure. The fire that surrounded his house went out, not when he died, but when the vessel that had contained it was removed. And what was left behind, what was poured into the world in that moment, was available in the frequency of Had, available to anyone humble enough to receive it. The practice moves through 3 stages. The first is descent. Stop fighting the cave. Stop treating your current season of darkness as something to overcome as quickly as possible. Descend into it with intention, the intention that says, I am here, I am not running. Whatever is in this darkness that I need, I will remain long enough to receive. Rabbi Shimon's first exit from the cave was premature. He came out before the refinement was complete and could not hold his own intensity without scorching the world around him. He had to return. The second emergence, when the process was truly finished, was the one that changed everything. Descend fully. Stay in the cave long enough. The second stage is silence, not the absence of prayer, not the suppression of pain, but the specific interior quality called ayin in Hebrew, which literally means nothing. The state of releasing your grip on the particular outcome you have decided is the only acceptable one. Opening your hands, emptying your agenda, spending time each day in stillness, not asking, not rehearsing, not bargaining, just present, just open, just here, creating the interior space that can be filled. The third stage is ignition. At some point in the silence, you will feel something. It may be barely perceptible. A warmth, like an ember you had given up on that is still holding heat somewhere under the ash. Do not dismiss it. Do not explain it away. Fan it carefully with your attention. Let it grow. The physical flame of Lag BaOmer is an outward sign of this interior act, noticing the small fire that is always burning in the human soul. Even in the longest cave, even in the darkest night, and choosing to tend it. Descent, silence, ignition. Return to these 3 stages whenever the cave feels permanent. Return to them on every Lag BaOmer. Return to them whenever the fire in you has grown small. There is something else worth knowing about the pilgrimage to Meron. The crowd that gathers at the tomb of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai on Lag BaOmer is not composed of only one type of Jewish person or one community. It includes Sephardic Jews and Ashkenazic Jews, Hasidic Jews and non-Hasidic Jews, deeply observant people, and people who have not set foot in a synagogue in years, but found themselves drawn toward the mountain on this night without being able to say exactly why. They do not all agree on theology. They do not all pray in the same nusak, the same liturgical tradition. Some of them hold each other's beliefs in deep suspicion during the other 364 days of the year. And on this one night, on this one mountain, they stand beside the same fires. They dance without asking each other's credentials. They weep at the same tomb. This too is part of what Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai left behind. Not just the Zohar, not just the mystical teachings, but the demonstration that the light he carried and transmitted is wide enough for everyone. The Talmud records that the plague that killed the students of Rabbi Akiva was a consequence of their failure to treat each other with sufficient respect. They were brilliant scholars, every one of them, and they were not kind enough to each other. And what Lag BaOmer celebrates, in part, is the end of that plague. The return of the capacity to see each other's dignity across differences of opinion, of tradition, of practice. When you come to the mountain, or when you receive the transmission of this day from wherever you are sitting, part of what you are receiving is the invitation to be wider, to hold more, To stop requiring that other people match your specific form before you allow yourself to be moved by their fire. Because the fire is one fire. The light that surrounded the house of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai on his last day was not the light of one sect or one tradition. It was the light of someone who had gone deep enough into the reality of the divine to encounter the place where all the branches of the tree meet the root. That depth is available to you. It does not require you to abandon your particular tradition or your specific practice. It requires you to go deeper into it. Deep enough that you find the root, and the root, as Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai discovered in the cave at Pekian, is not darkness, it is light. And now I want to speak directly to someone. You will know if it is you. Someone watching this has been in a very long cave. Not 13 years perhaps, but it has felt that long. A stretch of time that began with a loss or a rejection or a door closing with finality, and that has continued long past the point where you could explain it to the people who care about you. Long past the point where those people stopped knowing what to say. Long past the point where you yourself began to quietly wonder if something was permanently wrong. If you had somehow been disqualified from the kind of life you had believed was coming. It is not permanent. You have not been disqualified. The fire in you has not gone out. The Idra Zuta records what the disciples found when they were finally able to approach Rabbi Shimon at the end of that day of fire. He was lying on his right side, and his face was smiling. After everything that had passed through him, after the radiance and the intensity and the outpouring of what had been sealed in him since the cave, what remained on his face was joy. Not the relief of someone who had survived something terrible. Not the exhaustion of someone who had finished something hard. The settled, genuine, luminous joy of someone who had arrived exactly where they were always meant to arrive. That is where you are going. The cave is forming in you the exact shape of vessel that what is coming will require. The specific combination of pain and endurance and longing and faithfulness that has been your experience is not a record of failures. It is a formation. It is the architecture of what you are becoming. Someone watching this has been told by circumstances or silence or a door that closed too soon that something they deeply hoped for is over. I am standing here on the day the mysteries of heaven were unlocked, to tell you that the last word has not been spoken. The door is not bolted. On this day, in the tradition of the opening that happened in the Galilee 18 centuries ago, what was sealed is unsealed. There is someone watching this right now who has been carrying a word of hope for their family for a very long time. A marriage that has gone cold. A child who has walked away from everything they were raised with. A parent whose mind is disappearing into fog while the body remains. You have been standing in the gap for people you love, carrying them in prayer when they cannot carry themselves. And it has been long and it has been hard, and there have been many nights when the silence in response to your prayers has felt like the cruelest kind of answer. I want to say to you what the tradition says on Lag BaOmer. The fire that did not go out in the cave at Pekian does not abandon those who tend it for others. The light that Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai carried and released is not only available to the person who is suffering, it is available to the person who stands beside the suffering and refuses to leave. To the person who lights the fire when no one else in the room is lighting it. To the person who remembers what love looks like when love is harder than anything they have ever done. You are not invisible in your faithfulness. You are not forgotten in your endurance. The cave you are in is not only shaping you, it is shaping the situation around you in ways that are not yet visible from where you are standing. Hold the fire. Tend the flame. The formation is not finished, but it is working. And there is someone else Someone watching this who has been carrying shame about their past, who has made decisions that cost them and cost people around them more than they can fully account for, who has been living with a sense that the weight of what they have done has closed them off permanently from the kind of life and the kind of connection and the kind of divine closeness they know at some level is possible, who has been telling themselves quietly that people like them do not get to walk through this particular door. Listen to me carefully. The Talmud teaches that one who returns from a distance can reach a place that even the completely righteous cannot reach. The one who has wandered and come back carries something that the one who never wandered does not have. The return is not a lesser version of the arrival. It is its own form of the journey. And on Lag BaOmer, the day the deepest doors in heaven were recorded as open, the door for the one returning is not smaller than the door for the one who never left. You are not disqualified. You are exactly the right kind of person to receive what this day is offering. Receive that. Let it into the cold places. Let it reach whatever in you has gone quiet from waiting so long for warmth. Because this is why the mountain fills with people. Because human beings who have been in caves need to find each other. Because the fires say to each other and to the sky, we believe the light is real. We believe the darkness is temporary. We believe the door was left open. We believe the man who spent 13 years in a cave to become a vessel for something that was not his to keep was not wrong. And we are not wrong to come back to this day every year and receive what he left. When you cannot go to the mountain comes to you. Wherever you are sitting, close your eyes and say this: the door is open today. What was sealed is unsealed. I receive the light being poured out. I am a vessel. I am not empty. I am ready. Say it until you feel the glow behind it. Say it until the cold place in you begins to warm. Say it until the cave stops feeling like punishment and starts feeling like preparation. Go into the comments now and type it one more time. Open the door for me. Your declaration, your reaching, your signal that you are not a passive observer, but a person who is actually asking, actually present, actually willing to receive what this day is offering. And share this video with someone who needs it. Someone in the long wait. Someone whose fire has gotten very small. Let them sit beside this fire with you. Because Lag BaOmer is not a solitary experience. The hillside is a gathering. The fire is shared. And fire shared does not divide. It multiplies. The light of Lag BaOmer belongs to anyone who understands what kind of day this is. A day of opening. A day of unlocking. The yearly anniversary of the moment when a man who had given everything, in a cave, in hiding, in the dark, for the sake of a light that would outlast him and reach people he would never see, finished his work and released it. You are receiving it now. I want to say one more thing about fire before I close. Because we have been talking about fire as light and fire as warmth and fire as the symbol of what Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai released into the world, but there is another dimension of fire that I cannot leave out. Fire transforms. Whatever fire touches does not remain what it was. The wood that enters the flame does not come out as wood. It becomes something else entirely. The process involves destruction of the original form. And yet what remains, the warmth and the light, is worth the transformation. This is the other face of Lag BaOmer's fire. The face that is harder to look at, but just as true. Some of what the cave is burning away in you is not something you should mourn losing. Some of the forms your life has taken that were reduced to ash in this season were forms that were never going to be able to hold what was coming. They looked solid from the outside. They may have felt like the structure your life depended on, but they were not fireproof. And the fire that has been working on you in your cave season is not destroying you. It is destroying what was never the real you. What comes through the fire is not ash. What comes through the fire, when you have stayed long enough and descended fully enough and sat in the silence long enough to let the refining do its work, is something that was always in you but had never before been separated from everything else. Pure, essential. Ready? That is the final promise of Lag BaOmer. Not that the fire will not touch you, but that what is truly yours cannot be consumed by it. Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai walked into the cave as one kind of person and emerged from it as another. The process was not gentle, but what he became was so much more than what he had been that there is no word for the exchange except gift. Your cave is a gift. Your fire is a gift. Your Lag BaOmer is today. Wherever you are, in whatever season you are in, receive the gift. May the fire that surrounded the house in the Galilee find you wherever you are. May the radiance, the Zohar, the splendor that was formed in the cave at Pekin and released at Meron, reach into your own cave and make itself known to you. May the hillside, the celebration that the heavens themselves called for on the day Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai smiled and departed, be echoed today in your life, in the form of a recognition that arrives quietly and stays forever. Light something tonight. A candle will do. Sit beside a flame and let it say to you what the bonfires on the mountain say to everyone who comes: the light is real. The darkness is not final. You have not been abandoned in the cave. You are being formed on Lag BaOmer. The mystery of heaven is closer than your own breath. The door is open. Walk through it. May this day mark the beginning of the unlocking you have been waiting for. May every sealed place in your life begin today to open. May the long cave season you have been enduring begin today to bear the fruit it was always preparing. You were not forgotten. You were never forgotten. You were being formed for exactly this. Go forward in the light.